I've been quite lucky. I haven't really had any major obstacles to overcome in my football career. I mean, even playing every day in the States, training every day, playing games on a weekly basis, even then I've never had like a long-term injury. I mean, I hurt my back. I've got an injury in my first year, which I had throughout my 4 years in college. But even then, it was one of those things I just kind of dealt with. I had fantastic physiotherapies out there. We did rehab and prehab every day. So I didn't really miss any games or training apart from the odd one here or there. So I hadn't really had any kind of long-term injury or anything that I needed to overcome until last year. And it wasn't until I come back to the UK, started playing here again. And obviously when I joined Worcester City Women last summer in 2020, I started to play and everything was fine. And obviously then the games got cut short due to COVID. And I actually caught coronavirus myself. I got it in September time and I was really ill with it. I couldn't get out of bed for weeks. And then a couple of weeks after that, I thought, right, I need to give myself time before I go back into playing football, because the last thing I want to do obviously is get back playing, start enjoying it again, but not feel my, complete fittest. I want to make sure first and foremost I'm okay, and then I can help my team out in the, the best way possible. So after a good couple of weeks of rest and feeling 100%, it was actually my first game back was against Stourbridge in the FA Cup game, and it's the furthest Worcester City we've got so far in the campaign. So we've gone on a really, really good run. It was a very competitive fixture because obviously Stourbridge are a very structured and well-organised side. And about 30 minutes in, probably not even 30 minutes in, I went into a challenge and ended up having to come off the pitch. A couple of weeks later, found out I'd ruptured my ACL, which obviously means is, a huge long-term injury. You're probably going to be out anywhere from 9 to 12 months. So for me, I've probably gone my whole 27 years without getting any serious injury, being okay, being able to crack on and just play football. So it's only really recently I've had to kind of go through something or go through an adversity to kind of now get through in my sporting career. So obviously at the moment that this is a huge knockback, it's a hard injury. You always think, you see people do their ACLs all the time, in the women's game, a lot of people do it, and you never quite think it's going to happen to you. And I always thought, it wouldn't. I prepared properly. I normally do things in the right way, but obviously ACLs are ACLs. It doesn't work like that when you play football. So obviously when I did that, it was a huge shock because we didn't actually expect me to have done my ACL. We just thought it was maybe a cartilage tear or something like that. So to kind of hear the worst at the time sucked. It's, the worst news you could get as a footballer, because that's at least one season that you're completely out of the game. And even then, it takes a lot to come back. People have to rehab for 9 to 12 months until you're back to fitness. So for me, I'm obviously in the early stages of overcoming it. I wouldn't say, I'm absolutely super excited about it, because it's never a fun thing to go through. But for me, I think the key things that have helped me kind of acknowledge the injury and be able to be okay is the fact that I've had a fantastic support system. I think having a support system when you do a long-term injury is absolutely key. You need the right people around you to assist you. And I think it comes back to that quote. I don't know if you've ever heard the quote, which was like, you're a reflection of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And for me, I've got a good, not just 5 people, but I'd like to say I've got a good support system that are there to help me, to pick me up, to keep me positive. Days when I'm like, oh, I can't do the rehab, they're there to keep pushing me. And I think one of the things that's really helped is as I look to get my surgery in a couple of weeks' time is I think having a good routine and good habits is absolutely crucial. I think that is what drives consistency in anything, not just my personal journey now getting back to full fitness, but I think you drive your consistency through how good is your routine and how good are your habits. So even days when I think I just don't want to do the rehab, I'm tired today, it's just obviously getting through it, getting that good routine established so you can do it. So obviously for me, I'm finding that the mental side is probably going to be a lot harder than the physical side. I've been quite lucky since I've done it. I've still been able to run and walk and do many exercises and pretty much do everything I want to do. Obviously after I have surgery, it's going to go back to square one and kind of get back to walking and doing the basics. So, for me, I'm just kind of looking at it as a really good opportunity in the next 9, 12 months to, work on personal development. What else can I learn? What else can I do? And I think that's where Worcester City fits perfectly, that now hopefully I can help being the assistant manager. I can help players that want to develop, that want to get better, and give everything back to them. Oh, do you know what? I love this question. I could probably talk about this question for a long time, so I'll try and keep it short and sweet. If I kind of look at myself and what I'd expect, for me being an athlete and what I'd want to achieve as an athlete, if that was my main career goal and I always wanted to strive to be the best one I could, I think there's lots of attributes you need. Obviously, you need to be, physically wise, you need to be strong, powerful, quick. Those attributes help you be a better player. On the other flip side, there's also things that, being technically good, all those kind of attributes. You need to be a specific footballer. Of course, that's important. But I think if we're looking at an athlete overall, the number one thing that's always stood out for me as a player, as a coach, is when I assist people is what's their work ethic like. You can have the best player on the pitch, but it doesn't mean they're going to, help the team if their work ethic is next to none. I've always been a huge believer in that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I'd like to have thought that before I went to the States, and even during my time in the States as a student athlete, that I was never the most talented on the pitch or on the team, but I always knew I was never going to be beaten by hard work. And so for me, that is the biggest attribute an athlete can have, is their work ethic. How hard do they work? And not just in training on the pitch. We're talking about everything. We're talking about when you do the warm-up, do they skip the cones? Do they go around the cones? Do they do everything? All the small details that all add up to make you better as an athlete and the team better collectively. Do they do that? But I think there's obviously going to be lots of variables that make you a better athlete. I think things like being coachable is huge. Nobody likes to be in the wrong. It's human nature that we just hate being wrong, or we hate being told to do something a different way than what we're used to. So I think having an athlete that wants to be coached and want to learn and be adaptable is massive. I think willingness to learn is probably one of the big ones, because like I said, if you're not willing to learn, there's no point in you being there. You'll always be in a room where you can learn off absolutely everybody. You might be the most experienced and you might be the oldest there. Doesn't make you the most creditable. I think from anyone you meet, you can always learn something. So always having an athlete have that kind of mindset is really important, because even if you're one of the older ones on the team, it doesn't mean you can't learn from the younger ones. It doesn't mean you know everything already. So I think probably summing up the final or the complete athlete, I think you've also got to have the desire. You can work hard all you want. You can be coachable. You can have the willingness to learn. But I think if you want to make it as an athlete, you've got to have that desire inside you, whether it's intrinsic, extrinsic, whatever it may be, that gets you out of bed and gets you pumped and gets that fire burning to get you playing. I think you've got to have that desire. So like I said, I could probably talk about this question for ages, but I think that the most important things as an athlete are, and this is something we'd like to instill in our players at Worcester City, is we want their work ethic to be top notch. Okay. The least you can do is turn up on time, work hard when you're there. You're not going to play good every single day or every single training. That's, human nature. But work ethic, number one, be adaptable, number two, be coachable, willingness to learn, and I think definitely desire. Yeah, so the skills and qualities I think to make a great coach, I think it's going to link back to still being an athlete. I think if you go back to the basics and you drew the two circles and where everything meets in the middle, I think those ones that meet in the middle, you're still going to want you're still going to want a coach that's got a great work ethic at the end of the day. But I think there's obviously going to be things that are adapted, because you're not just a player, you're not just worried about yourself and getting results as a team. You're obviously responsible and accountable for that team. They look up to you at the end of the day. So I think the skills and qualities, there's a lot you can take as a player and also want in a coach too. You'd want to see a good coach that has those kind of traits of working hard. You want them to have the desire at the end of the day. You want them to be coachable and likable and things like that. But I think that the biggest differences and the biggest qualities you'd probably want as a coach would be listening skills. And it sounds super basic, but I think every single person you work with is different. Every single player on your team will have had a different background, a different upbringing, different things that motivate them to be who they are, to be successful, to keep achieving, keep wanting to work hard. So I think the number one quality and skill as a coach is you have to listen to your players. You have to know what makes each of those players tick. For example, there's a couple of players I've worked with in the past where some of them you can give them a rollicking at halftime, you can shout at them to get them fired up because that's going to get the best results out of them. But then there's some people on the other hand you couldn't do that to, because they'd get down, they'd get sad, they'd beat themselves up, they won't go out there and perform. And in that case, sometimes they just need kind of an arm around their shoulder to help them, a couple of words, a couple of sentences to get them pumped, get them back on it. So I think you've got to listen to your players and really listen to what they want and what they're saying, because everyone's different and you need to adapt to assist those players for them to be successful individually, and hopefully then as a result the team be successful. Communication skills is absolutely massive. You've got to be able to communicate with your players, because obviously if you can't communicate, they're not going to have a clue what they're doing with anything, let alone training or games. And also the communication's got to go both ways. It's not just about a coach communicating and dictating, saying this is how it's going to be, this is the only way, it's my way or the highway. Again, it comes back to listening to what the players want, communicating back to them, expressing what you expect from them, how they can hold you accountable, how you can hold them accountable. And I think you do need the ability to motivate them. Like I said, it comes back to understanding your players, because some people might get motivated very, very easily. They're quite driven intrinsically, especially when it comes to, the fitness aspects. A lot of people I know, kind of hate fitness, and they know it's part and parcel of the game with football. But there's a lot of people at Worcester City at the moment, there's a handful of people that just absolutely love fitness. And for them, they'd go out and run 5Ks every day for the rest of their lives. So for them, you don't need to motivate them to go and do fitness. So it's kind of having that ability to listen to your players, communicate with your players, obviously both ways, the ability to motivate them and get the best out of them. And I think the really important thing is, again, hard work always comes back to it. You still want to have a coach that works hard, because if that coach works hard, you're going to find that probably resonates across the team, that everyone else thinks, well, if they're working hard, the least I can do is work hard as a player. But I think one important thing as a coach is you always need to keep learning. There's never a set way, a set tactic, a set style. Okay, I know every single coach has kind of their own little kind of lookout on how they want the team to be, the shape to be, the tactics to be. But I'm just a big believer in that, you've always got to learn and you've always got to adapt, because if you keep sticking to the one way, granted it might work for a couple of seasons, it'd be great, but after that it's going to start getting old. As we talked about, research, there's always new things, research, technology, new things coming out in the sports science world. If you're not learning, you're only then affecting your players. And at the end of the day, it's your players that you're there help coaching. So I think you've always got to learn and always got to want to better yourself as a coach to then get the best out of your players as well.